All right, welcome back to our second video in our CSD Off-The-Cuff. Just to recap, if this happens to be the video that you pick up on, I am practicing. There's an exercise that Scrum Alliance is going through where they're asking their instructors to pick a learning objective at random. We are given 5 minutes to decide how to teach it, and then we have to deliver it in 20 minutes, really completely off the cuff. Not only that, but we're limited in the tools that we can use to teach it. So I can speak to you, I can ask you to do kind of thought exercises and write your thoughts down on maybe a sticky note. I can ask people to talk to each other, and I can use a flip chart, and that's it. In this case, instead of a flip chart, because flip charts have a tendency to be expensive, I'm going to be using a tablet to draw on, and it'll end up on the screen. Um, that will take the place of a flip chart. My hope is that you get one, to hear some of the learning objectives from the Certified Scrum Developer class. Hopefully that's useful information to you. And two, for people who are interested in being an instructor with Scrum Alliance, either with being able to teach CSMs, CSPOs, CSDs, Certified Agile Leader, any of the rest of them, this step is, my understanding, is going to be a step that's required going forward for anyone who teaches those things. That's my understanding of it. I'm not a Scrum Alliance representative. Take that for what it is. So let's jump in. What's our topic going to be? Let's see. I'm going to click my. Sorry, over here's my other screen. I'm going to click my random topic generator. And it looks like we have, in collaboration team dynamics 2.1, explain at least three differences between a working group and a team. And you'll notice there's comprehension. So that means that you have to have, it's not just listing off three differences, it's understanding them and sort of a deeper level of understanding. So I'm going to start my 5-minute timer and figure out how I'm going to teach this off the cuff. See y'all in 5 minutes. All right, so we have our learning objective, right? So again, this is 2.1, explain at least three differences between a working group and a team. And this is a comprehension level, so there's a certain amount of understanding to it, not simply being able to recite off three different differences. I've got my timer right here, and we're going to set that timer for a maximum of 20 minutes. I don't think we're going to take quite that long. Set that up for myself there. And let's get going. So, all right, what I want to do as a class, we want to talk about teams and what makes an effective team. And in order to do this, one of the things we want to do, right, in this evaluation, of course, in a real class, we have a number of different people out there. And I'm actually going to use an exercise. In this exercise, I want everyone to first take a sticky note, which my understanding is they will have. Obviously, in the class, I would provide them. And I would like them to write down. I would like them to write down the answers to a couple of different questions. I want you in your mind to think about a sports team. This could be a physical sport, like American football, or what everyone else calls football, right? Soccer. It could be baseball. It could be any team sport where you have to work together as a team in order to win the game, right? And because I'm working with developers a lot of times, yes, esports are included. So if your big sport is Overwatch or League of Legends or anything else, feel free to include those as a fair game too, right? So I have my idea of a team sport or activity in mind, right? So thinking of that team, I want you to think of ideally the most professional level team that you can. So not like a bunch of my friends get together and have a beer and play this game. They're serious about it, right? And I want you to answer a couple of questions. When you think about the structure of that team, think about the different positions or roles or what have you on that team, and think about maybe what skills overlap. right? What skills overlap? I want you to think about where are specialties? And then for your particular sport that you're thinking about, um, how do these different overlapping skills, specialties, areas of expertise, how does the team combine those to win the game? So we'll put up these questions here so you have them for reference. I'm just going to give you know what, 60 seconds. Think about it. Jot down your answers. On my timer, I'm just going to kind of mentally deduct 60 seconds from my allotted time, and I'm just going to give time for them to consider that. So 60 seconds is going to go by. And, in a class, I would dedicate the time to have some small group conversations. I think that's really valuable. For a simulation, we're all in the same room. It's a handful of people. We're just going to have a group conversation. We're going to talk about what are the answers to this, right? And what I typically hear in a class when I do this is, let's say, for example, I'm playing soccer. Well, things I'm going to want to do. The biggest overlap is going to be dribbling and passing, right? By far the biggest overlap in skills. Every single position, with arguably the exception of goalie, needs these skills. Where are their specialties? Goalie, whole bunch of different skills. To a lesser degree, your fullback probably does not need to know how to shoot all that well, right? Probably doesn't happen very often, right? But everyone who's kind of on that forward line does, right? So there's some specialization and some overlap. There's sort of a mix of the two. What about combining? How do I combine to win the game? Well, in soccer, what I'm going to be trying to do is I'm going to be trying to kind of pass to the people who are in the best position to shoot and use those skills, right? So I know who has which skills, who's really great at maneuvering around other people, who's great at getting around defenders, who's great at sneaking into a great position, who's going to be able to capitalize on different things. And I'm going to know this about people, and I'm going to try to leverage that in the moment with a strategy that balances the use of those skills off of the use of other people's skills. And this is the kind of thing I want to hear and what I want to draw out. And that's true of any team sport, right? Is that you have to understand each other's skills and understand how to leverage those skills in balance in order to win the game. So this is a whole lot of preamble, right? I'm already through 6 minutes of my time. Seems like a whole lot of preamble. I haven't even gotten to answering the objective yet. That's fine. Here's where we're going to tie it together. I want to draw a graph of when we try to form teams, right? And on my y-axis of my graph, I'm going to have performance. We'll just put P here. On my x-axis, I'm gonna have time. I'm not gonna do it as time. I'm gonna do it as team maturity. So when I say maturity, it's time, but it's time learning how to work together, right? And becoming more and more adept at working together. So not simply time, right? And here's where we're going to introduce two different terms. And actually, when we talk about this in theory, there are a whole bunch of extra terms, but I just want people to know two. Those terms are working group and team. Okay? So a working group, I want you to imagine that I take a group of people for any activity, and I stick them together. I say, this is the activity you're supposed to do. I have put together the greatest group of people who know all the skills necessary to do this. And in class, we probably would have already talked about cross-functional teams, or maybe this would be team up cross-functional teams. But I have all the skills necessary, definition of a cross-functional team, I have all the skills necessary to deliver on the value statement of the team, right? So this is what we're going to call a working group. Kind of self-explanatory. This is a group of people who are working towards a particular end. And they have some set level of productivity. That is, I can do this part, I can do this part, I can do this part. We're going to assume for the moment that everyone is competent in their skills. Therefore, they will do those things, and they'll hand them off as needed between people in order to get something done, right? So let's say we're a software development team. I have an architect, and they're going to kind of design how a feature should work from a backend standpoint, and they'll hand it off to a UX designer who designs what it should look like, and then they'll hand it off to a developer, and that developer will write the code, and then they'll hand it off to a tester. That tester will test it and make sure that it works properly. They'll reach out to each other if it doesn't, right? Hey, this doesn't work properly, or this doesn't match the mock-up that the designer gave us, and we'll pass it around to each other, and eventually we'll get the feature delivered, and that gives us our baseline level of productivity. So I've got this working group. Now I'm going to put some pressure and say it's not enough for you to simply do your task. I need you to collectively own the delivery of this item, right? Because the challenge that we have with a working group is if the thing doesn't get delivered, I just gave that example where we succeeded in the end. Well, what if it doesn't succeed? Well, the designer, the UX designer says, I gave you a mock-up. Architect says, I gave you a design. Coder says, I coded it. Works on my machine. Tester says, hey, look, it just handed me at the end and it didn't work. I don't know what to tell you, so I kicked it back. And we hit our deadline and we miss it. Whose fault is it? Well, I don't know. Because everyone did their thing, but it didn't come together well. Right? This is the weakness with working groups, is we assume if everyone does their thing, it'll just work. And too often it doesn't. So we say instead what I want to do is I want to collectively own this. We should be working together. We should be talking to each other. When one person's struggling, another person should be stepping in and asking how to help out. Or remember this thing from our skills. We have skills overlap. How do those overlaps work? How do those specialties work? How do we leverage them together to to win the game, deliver the feature, right? So I said I want to introduce these two terms. This is at a base level, the difference between a working group and a team, right? Is we're going to do a couple of different things. A working group and a team, we are collectively working towards an end goal. Not we all do our little parts and hope it comes together. We are all collectively responsible for reaching that end goal, winning the game, delivering the feature, right? So let's go put collective ownership. We understand what each of us brings to the table. So I don't know what I bring to the table. I understand what everyone else brings to the table too. So I understand each other's skills. And additionally, we actively look for ways to work together in which we can leverage those skills from each other to get better results than we could get without looking, I just focus on my work, you focus on your work, hope it comes together at the end. So we're actively improving our process to leverage each other's skills together. Now I'm going to use a corporate buzzword. I hate using corporate buzzwords, but it's important. This is what this thing means. When we actively improve our processes in order to leverage each other's skills to work together better, this difference between our working group level of productivity and our team level of productivity is called synergy. So yes, I know it's a corporate buzzword. This is what synergy actually means, though. It is this difference between those two levels. I'm going to get rid of that line in a second, though. There's one other really important thing that you need to understand. Getting rid of the whole synergy. There we go. One other important thing that you need to understand about this process is it's not a straight line. And this is where teams really struggle. I'm going outside of this I'm going outside of this uh, learning objective here. Excuse me. Sorry. Going outside of this learning objective here. Hey, you can choke inside the inside the simulation too. So I guess get the practice in. Um, but when we talk about this theory, an important thing to remember is that we actually don't have a straight line. Because when we first start working as a working group, we all have our own little lanes, and that's great. That's easy. Little bits of handoff. That's all I have to worry about. But when we have to start paying attention to what other people are doing, this is where we start accidentally stepping on each other's toes. Even if we have the best, most professional people in the world, we start kind of stepping in ways that trips up this person, or that's not what they needed for their piece, or whatever. And what happens is we actually take a little bit of a dip in productivity. And sometimes this is where organizations or teams start freaking out. Oh my God, we were better before. Why are we doing this? The reason you're doing this is because as you learn to stop stepping on each other's toes, this dip flattens out. And as you have these conversations, you start to learn, how do you actually help each other? How do you improve? It's not just a handoff, but it's you're both carrying it for a little bit. You're doing things in a specific way that makes it even easier for the next person to their job. And then you start getting more and more benefit out of working together. Things start improving. They pass the point where you were at when you were a working group, and they gain this synergy of this higher amount of productivity as a team. And this is important because this is really the hard part about building teams. It's not just putting the right people together, but helping them through this dip in productivity that's a little bit scary. Helping them figure out how to work together, get to the other side, and get that extra productivity. That's really important. So we're going a little bit past those learning objectives there. There's also a weird thing. I don't think I'm going to get this in the simulation. I'm kind of going to pause. I'm at 5 minutes now left. I'm going to pause here because what I would do here is I would really just hand it back. And I would say, think about your working environment. Think about your teams. And I want you to come back to these. Do they have collective ownership? Do they understand where they're all trying to go, or are they worried about doing their thing? Right? That would say I'm at that working group side, if they're worried about their thing. Do they understand each other's skills? Do they know where their skills overlap and where they have those specialties? And do they actively improve their process to leverage those different skills, those different overlaps and specialties to become more effective, to get further up this curve on productivity? And that's how you have an understanding of where you have a team or a working group. And I would give a couple minutes for people to consider this. And I would ask them to share back, because that's my opportunity to validate that they have comprehension of these differences between a working group and a team. Now I'm going to say one other thing for the sake of like that panel. One of the things that we're expected to do is identify where things are Scrum and where things are not Scrum. And the term working group, and actually they don't use working group and team. It's working group, and I believe it's either true team or high performing team. But it comes from a team maturity model called Katzenbach and Smith, which is absolutely not part of Scrum. So what we're doing, in fact, in the Scrum guide, it leaves a lot open to the team. It says some things that the team needs to be responsible for, that they do need to have ownership. So the idea that the whole Scrum team collectively owns the responsibility of delivering a valuable increment is inside of Scrum. It insinuates many of these things. It does say that the team needs to be cross-functional, but that's a base requirement of both effective working groups and teams. So I would say that this learning objective is, in my view, wholly outside of Scrum. It's wholly supplementary to Scrum, which as we get through more of these, in all honesty, that's just going to happen over and over and over again. CI/CD from the last video is not documented anywhere in the Scrum Guide either, but it is a thing when we do. It is important to understand: am I talking about Scrum, or am I giving you extra information that's helpful? And so that's something that I would probably call out in this. That's a little meta, right? So different people I think are watching these videos. People who are interested in like, oh, well, what am I going to have to do inside of the review? They're going to find that useful. People who just want to know about effective teams are probably like, why did we talk about that for the last 3 minutes? So different audiences. Thanks for bearing with me. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. Like I said, this is kind of this goes a little bit past this learning objective, but I think it's important in order to actually have that comprehension, understand how would I take this back to my team and build a more effective team coming out of the class. Thank you for watching, and next week we'll bring yet another learning objective.